Welcome to the Plan B CRNA podcast. I'm your host, Bobby Jones, and I'm so excited that you're here. The Plan B CRNA podcast is the only show made specifically for nurse anesthetists who are exploring options outside of their traditional career paths. This is the place to expand your mind and your goals as we uncover new ways to produce side income together. The mindset that we bring to any situation plays a key part in overcoming challenges and really enjoying our unique paths in life. On Thoughtful Thursdays, I like to explore emotional topics that are relevant to CRNAs and other providers. I think of this as my therapy, and I hope you learn some tips and tricks that you can use along your own journey. This episode is brought to you by On-Call Capital. On-Call Capital is dedicated to educating CRNAs and other healthcare providers about investing outside of the traditional stock market. On-Call Capital also provides opportunities for you, yes, you, to create passive income and generational wealth while also lowering your taxable income through investments in the apartment and alternative investment spaces. If you haven't hit subscribe yet, make sure you do that right now so that you don't miss an episode. Thanks so much for joining me today, and now on with the show. Welcome to Thoughtful Thursdays on the Plan B CRNA podcast. I'm your host, Bobby Jones. Today, I've got two quotes I'd like to start with that both got me thinking. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, "Whenever you have trouble getting up in the morning, remind yourself that you've been made by nature for the purpose of working with others, whereas even unthinking animals share sleeping. And it's our own natural purpose that is more fitting and satisfying." And the second quote, John A. Shedd once said, "A ship in harbor is safe, but that is not what ships are built for." So I want to talk about purpose today, but not just the type that gets you out of bed in the morning. We all have reasons for that, whether it's going to work to put food on the table or getting your kids off to school or even a great hobby that you enjoy doing. No, I am talking about purpose with a capital P, that single all-encompassing reason why you are here doing the things you do. For those of you watching on YouTube, you'll notice that my background is a bit different. I chose this background because when I was a kid, I wanted to be an astronaut. I thought my purpose would be to soar into space, exploring new worlds, and I remain in awe of the universe to this day. But as I grew up, I realized that this dream was probably not going to happen. I still hold out hope for civilian space travel, but mainly for my children more than myself. My son Elliot tells me that when he becomes an astronaut, he's going to take me with him. You got to love that, right? Well, nursing was actually my second degree after a degree in business administration. And it was a real process of elimination for me in my undergrad, ticking off careers from my list, such as engineering, medical doctor, salesman, realtor, and the like. After that degree, though, I felt like I finally found my purpose by discovering the nurse anesthesia career. And I continued to think this after I started anesthesia school. In fact, I wanted so badly to have found my true purpose in life through nurse anesthesia that I dove in headfirst into leadership positions once I graduated. This is what I was meant to do, I told myself, even though I knew it deep down in my heart that it probably wasn't my true purpose. My career provided me with great income for sure and some level of societal status, but it wasn't feeding my soul the way that it did for some others. On a side note, it's funny how much we tie up our identity with our careers. Come to find out, it's a pretty American thing to do, to introduce yourself and your occupation when you meet someone for the first time. It's a way to go ahead and kick off, kind of a status of where you are versus other people. And so for me, I plan to actually start asking people, what keeps you busy, in an effort to get them thinking beyond their job title and get to know them more individually and get to know them better. People are much more compelled by your story than your facts of what you do and, how you make your money. And so I've thrown a couple of article links in the show notes in case you're interested in a little more information. Anyway, I had settled into my everyday work life after a few years, but I just felt like a cog in a wheel, a warm butt in a chair. Sure, I was helping patients, but I was more lost than ever. And if my career wasn't my purpose, then what could it be? I'm a runner and I enjoy exercise, sports, bowling, but those are hobbies, not my purpose. My wife and I tried out a new church a few years back, and they were very socially focused. The viewpoint is that Jesus said to help the poor, so that's what they do. They set up shop in the poor part of town and began providing meals to the hungry, a place to stay for the homeless, safe study areas for disadvantaged children, and free health checkups and dental care for those who can't afford it. Anyone who knows me knows I'm not exactly a God guy, but I am passionate about helping those who need it. I am a nurse, after all. We have since volunteered and made meals, and I've stayed overnight at the homeless shelter. I always felt better after directly helping others in need, but it's hard not to feel like these types of situations should just be less common than they are. As such, it felt like my purpose was something bigger. And then COVID-19 hit, and we stopped participating in those things. With 3 unvaccinated kids, we would never have, forgiven ourselves if one of them had fallen ill or worse. So, in March of 2020, our world, like others, really turned upside down. All of a sudden, all 5 of us were at home, and I needed to be more of a husband and father than I'd ever been forced to be. We started hiking the Mountains to Sea Trail a lot as a family here in North Carolina, and that's been really enjoyable. So is traveling and hiking part of my big purpose? Probably not, as they're just hobbies, but it could be. And sure, I feel a sense of awe when I stand up on top of a mountain and look out over the expanse. But, like I mentioned before, I feel a similar wonder when I gaze upon the stars in my own backyard. And I must admit, while I'm very engaged and I love, love, love my family, I haven't figured out over the past year and a half if they are my big purpose either. Now, back in 2010, researchers at the CDC conducted a large study on Americans' well-being. They asked participants about their sense of purpose and meaning in life. When asked specifically if their lives have a clear sense of purpose, only 20% of Americans strongly agreed. When asked if they have a good sense of what makes their lives meaningful, only 33%, or a third, strongly agreed. And when asked if they have discovered a satisfying life purpose, nearly 40% of people reported that they hadn't. Now, this is a bit disturbing and a bit comforting at the same time. Most of us adults don't really have it all figured out. Often we think that we're alone in this. We look around and see seemingly successful people all over the place. We see the perfect picture that folks paint on their social media profiles, and we think that we ourselves are in the minority. But the truth is, most of us are wrestling with these same questions. Going back to the earlier quote, Marcus Aurelius said that it's our own natural purpose that is more fitting and more satisfying. But he didn't say how frustratingly elusive finding that big purpose could be. There can be real anxiety, fear, and insecurity involved when we have trouble along the journey. Now, Jordan Harbinger describes this as the cult of purpose. This happens when the exciting journey to find out what we want to do with our lives becomes a desperate quest to satisfy an external idea of who we should be. And many of us make this mistake. This is what I did for years. But grasping at an external purpose and then fighting to fulfill it is an excellent recipe for imposterism. Instead of using reflection to step into who we already are, we create a fictional idea of who we should be and try to become that instead. But purpose isn't something that we just decide. It's something that we discover and develop over time. Harbinger goes on to explain 3 key strategies to actually find your purpose. Number 1, help the people around you. Being of service in general is the, fundamental purpose of all of us on this planet. Humans survived together, after all. No matter what, your big purpose will always depend on adding value to others. And if you take on generosity as a mindset, you'll find that it's a fantastic way to deepen relationships and create new opportunities for yourself. Number 2, don't just do what you love. Do what you're willing to work hard at. For most people, purpose goes hand in hand with things that we naturally enjoy. Again, this doesn't mean that if you enjoy a hobby that you must make that your life's purpose. And in fact, the opposite could happen if you try to turn something you love into a job. You may rob yourself of the enjoyment you once felt. But if you enjoy an activity and you're willing to work hard at it, then it could hold the key to your true purpose. If an activity you enjoy makes you want to explore it more in depth, thinking about it constantly, or wanting to go through the hard work of being great at it, then perhaps you are moving towards that big purpose. Now, number 3, focus on action, not ideas. there's a fascinating thread that runs right under the surface of your journey to find a purpose, and that is action. You can't just think up something and decide that it's now your purpose. This isn't merely an intellectual endeavor. But when you're taking action and producing, building, fostering, or creating something real, you can follow that to uncover your big purpose. Now, I will say this part hits me big time because I've always considered myself to be an idea and vision guy. I tend to overthink and get into that whole analysis paralysis state. I've had many ideas over the years, but I have trouble committing to consistent action sometimes. But if you never actually try to do the thing you're thinking of, you'll never know if you enjoy it enough to continue with it through struggles to become great at it. As a result, your potential purpose won't ever become real. Now, in conclusion, words are powerful, but they matter much less than the action we take. Our ships aren't meant to stay docked. They're meant to go out and explore the ocean. We don't find purpose through thinking. We find purpose through doing. That's how we can begin to truly live our purpose and having a meaningful and impactful life. That's going to do it for today's show. Make sure you check out the show notes for a couple of links to help you out on your journey to find your purpose. And if you found value today, make sure you hit subscribe so that you don't miss an episode. I also want to hear from you. If you have a question, comment, or topic that you'd like me to cover in an upcoming show, make sure you rate and review on your podcast player. I check those all the time and cover those questions in future episodes. I hope you'll join me next time. This is Bobby Jones signing off. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of the Plan B CRNA podcast. If you haven't already subscribed and reviewed the show, I'd be honored if you took the extra time. It really helps to expand our reach and get the word out about the show. If you're a CRNA who is interested in sharing your story on our podcast, I'd love to have you. Please email me at bobby@oncallinvestments.com for more information. This episode was brought to you by OnCall Capital. They are dedicated to helping providers like you develop passive income and generational wealth through investments in the apartment and alternative investment spaces. Feel free to check out their website at www.oncallinvestments.com and subscribe to their free educational email series. You can find OnCall Capital on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. You can also check out our YouTube page, where you'll find all of the show episodes along with other educational videos. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.